welcome to another edition of Top 10 Thursdays on Big Train TV. I'm your host, Alex Drain, and this week's episode will look at game number 7 on our countdown of the greatest games in Bethesda Big Train history. Tonight's episode is brought to you by the Dandy Walker Alliance, a proud partner of Big Train Baseball. You can visit dandywalker.org to learn more today. Today's contest took place on July 28, 2018, and pitted the Bethesda Big Train against the Baltimore Redbirds in Game 1 of the 2018 League Championship Series, an exciting back-and-forth affair. For this episode, we'll be speaking to former Big Train pitcher Chris Clarke, Big Train manager Sal Colangelo, as well as former Big Train writer Paige, Leckie, and former Big Train broadcaster PJ Glasser. Let's dive right in. The story of the 2018 season in the Cal Ripken League was really a tale of a two-team battle for league supremacy. In one corner, there was the Bethesda Big Train, and in the other corner were the Baltimore Redbirds. The Big Train finished with an impeccable regular season record of 34-6, and were powered by a deep and well-balanced roster of excellent hitters, starting pitchers, and bullpen arms.
What I definitely remember was that team was a lot of blue-collar guys. We had very good pitching. We had great relief pitching. We had guys like Justin Wiley and them out in the outfield that just overachieved day in and day out. You had Alex Burleson that showed up at a quarter through the season because of regionals and postseason. And I believe his first game with us was at Herndon. He hits 2 home runs at Annandale High School. We just had a lot of clutch hitting, a lot of clutch play, but the guys came to the ballpark and just wanted to play every single day. So it was a very, very good team.
The season was pretty remarkable as a whole. Up to that point, at least in the playoffs, they had swept the Thunderbolts. But overall, the team had come together throughout the season, and you didn't really have any cliques. And so everyone got along really well, and that really showed on the field.
Yeah, 2018 was a great season. Big Train's always got entertaining teams, but that season, especially their offense, was just off the charts, especially Alec Burleson. There were games, there were stretches where it seemed like he would hit a home run every single night, and it was a lot of fun to watch him. Carson Taylor, who usually hit third right in front of him, play third base, he came in and he was going into his freshman year at Virginia Tech, and to be that young, and you could already see the talent that he possessed, he was awesome. And then the pitching staff, they had some great starters, but their bullpen, the back end of that bullpen, guys like Jacob McCarville and Hunter Brown.
The Redbirds, on the other hand, had a regular season record of 31-9, and after both teams won their opening round to advance to the League Championship Series, it was a matchup of two teams with a long-standing rivalry and a series that, frankly, everyone saw coming.
It was always us and the Redbirds in the final. They were a mirror image of what we were. I didn't think they had the pitching they've had. They had the pitching. They didn't have the hitting that they've had in the past. But nonetheless, they were very well coached. Redbirds step on the field. You knew what you're going to get. They're going to play hard.
What made the Redbirds so good is they had a lot of the similarities that Big Train did. They were almost mirror images of each other. They had a great manager, just like the Big Train does with Sal Colangelo, a good foundation. They had a great pitching staff. They could go to seemingly a number of guys in any situation. And then their lineup was just well balanced. They had guys at the top of the order with speed and who could get on base. The middle of their order had tons of pop and power, and they gave Big Train a lot of trouble. And there were just no easy outs in their lineup. 1 through 9, any of their guys could get on base, do damage, and it made for a great 3-game series and great battles throughout whenever they played in the regular season.
As an opponent, those were pretty much our only rivals. I mean, that was the only team we were ever pulling up to the field one day, and we were like, okay, we gotta all be focused here. Everybody's got to be on it because they're just as equal to us. I mean, they had, I think, Brendan Salucci, who I'm close with. I think he's at Tulane, something like that. He was a lefty that threw cheddar. I think they threw him in one of the games, and he was a good dude. But on the baseball field, it was the last guy you wanted to see. He's disgusting. And we knew, and we had guys like that too, but we had to be aware of the fact that we were evenly matched.
Salucci didn't just start any game for the Redbirds. As a matter of fact, the ace lefty from Tulane started this very game for the Redbirds, who put their best pitcher on the bump to steal Game 1 on the road and take control of the series, something they expected due to his prowess and season of success against Bethesda.
Yeah, Salucci, he was good. He was a left-handed hitter. By far the pitcher that gave Big Train the most trouble all season long. They really didn't hit him at all until that Game 1 of the championship series. So when Big Train was putting up those numbers that they did offensively and got to him in those early innings, it was pretty surprising. But I mean, he was great. He had an awkward delivery as a lefty, almost like a Randy Johnson kind of sidearm slot a little bit. He would hide the ball so late, and the hitters just could not pick up the movement on his pitches, and he was really tough to hit for the Big Train.
For Bethesda, taking the mound was Chris Clarke, who had been one of the Big Train's better starting pitchers throughout the 2018 season.
Chris Clarke was up the top of the rotation. We always matched him up with certain teams because his ability and to get outs, and had that slider that was just filthy. Chris came to us from Bill Sizemore. I remember as it was yesterday, you need to take this guy out of USC, and he's coming. You don't need to speak to his coach, and he wants to come and work on his mechanics. And if it clicks, he's going to be a top round draft pick, which he was, and it clicked. And he was a bulldog. He definitely wanted the ball every 4 to 5 days. He came right after. He did what we want all starting pitchers to do in the summer: get us to the 4th or 5th inning, keep us close, keep us competitive, and he did that.
He pitched some big innings in that championship series. Definitely tall pitcher out of USC. I think he was like 6'6", 6'7", or something like that. So intimidating force on the mound. But he got the ball for Game 1 of that series against the Redbirds ace, Brandon Salucci. And, it was an offensive game, obviously, but Clarke gave him some good innings. He went deep enough where Sal could use the meat of his bullpen for the later innings in that game.
That night, Shirley Povich Field was packed for Game 1, with the majority of the crowd being hometown partisans, but there were a fair number of Baltimore Redbirds fans who made the trek southwards, which made for an intense game in the stands, and the play on the field matched the high-energy feeling. The Redbirds took a 1-0 lead in the top of the second, but in the bottom half of the frame, it was catcher Ben Martz who delivered a 2 RBI single to put Bethesda up 2-1, another installment in a long line of key hits from Mr. Clutch.
He came in really clutch in some places where you didn't necessarily expect it. Everyone on the team was a good player, but Ben was able to kind of come in, and if he needs to do something or get something done, he was able to do it.
The way Ben plays the game is very laid back, philosophical. He lets the ball come to him, and he's a patient guy in the game.
The Big Train tacked on a run in the third inning and another in the fourth to take a 4-1 edge into the middle frames of the contest. In the fifth inning, though, starter Chris Clarke ran into trouble. Clarke surrendered 3 in the top of the fifth, culminating in a 2 RBI double from Christian Halinka, and the game was knotted at 4 halfway through.
I do remember giving up quite a few big hits, and I do remember that my curveball was shaky that day. I think I was super hyped up. I think I actually changed my walk-up song for that game because they had canceled the day before because we were supposed to have it one day. And I was super locked in, did everything right. I was very prepared. And then they canceled, so I was really pissed. So I changed my walk-up song to something stupid.
In the sixth inning, manager Sal Colangelo went to his bullpen and tabbed Hunter Brown, and then in the seventh, he went to Ryan Metz, a pair of situational decisions made with a particular goal in mind.
So we wanted to keep it close. Hunter was a guy that worked hard and came in 87, 89, and leaves out 94, 95, and obviously it was a high-round draft pick by the Astros a couple years ago. But we wanted to keep it close. We figured we could get some runs, and he was at that point just unhittable. So that's why we kind of brought him in and went to a couple more guys. Kind of, 3-game tournament essentially is what it is. You don't want to burn somebody, he's done for the rest of the series.
But Hunter, I mean, he'd go anywhere from inning 5, 6, 7, or 8. It kind of all just depended on how many days rest he had, who the pitchers were that were ready in the bullpen. I mean, it differed, but that's what made Hunter so great, was that you could use him if a starter was struggling, to have him come in and eat up a couple innings, or you could use him in the 7th or 8th inning to hand the ball off to McCarville.
It was like 5 innings or 75 pitches, I believe, was the rule. So night after night, we'd have to throw guys out of the pen. And it took a while to figure out, like who was supposed to be in the game. But everybody out of the pen knew exactly what needed to be done when they were put into that situation. Because I think a big part of summer ball is just having confidence in yourself to know that you were put into the game in a big situation. And when you're always winning, it's fun to be put in the game. And our bullpen was constantly day in and day out just putting up zeros like a piggy bank.
Despite the confidence that the team had in its bullpen, the results were far more mixed. Baltimore got one off of Brown in the 6th and another off of Metz in the 7th, and they carried a 6-4 lead into the 7th inning stretch. Still, the dangerous bats in the Bethesda lineup made them ready to mount a comeback.
They had a few comeback wins that were pretty big, and while they did have some big blowout wins, especially early on in the season, whenever they played the Redbirds, it remained pretty close. And so they were used to having to kind of fight for it, especially with the Redbirds. And there were a few games with, I think, the Thunderbolts, and some other team I'm forgetting, where it was really back and forth. And so they had kind of been prepared for that moment.
I mean, the team mindset was, we're winning today.
Yeah.
Like there's no circumstance today that we can't overcome. I mean, it was really just a matter of, well, we ran out of outs. If you give us enough innings, that team was going to do it. And in this game, I mean, we went back and forth a multitude of times, but guys just came up in clutch situations.
The rally started in the bottom of the 7th with 2 on and 2 outs. Alec Burleson doubled to score A.J. Lee and trim the lead to 1. Then, Justin Wiley drew a walk, followed by a Jacob Southern walk, to force in the game-tying run, and after 7 innings, it was a 6-6 game. That Justin Wiley was involved in the rally was an example of a key player in the lineup, delivering with the season on the line.
When we needed a big hit or a home run, he got it down. He really came to us not really knowing what his approach was, what his abilities were. And, he left us a much better player and ended up starting for Arizona his senior year and had a great season.
Wiley was good, man. He was smooth. He probably had the most impressive hit I saw all season of that team. I'll never forget it. Straight away center field. And in Povich, that's the deepest part of the park. And he hit it over that high fence. And it was one of those hits where, I mean, as soon as he made contact with it, you just knew that it was leaving the yard. And that's what was so impressive about him, is he was a good contact hitter. He hit for a good average, but he possessed some serious pop.
With the game tied at 6, the big train went to Jacob McCarville in the 8th, who had closed for them much of the season and had been dominant. But instead it was the Redbirds who proved resilient again, scoring 2 solo homers off McCarville to take an 8-6 lead headed into the bottom of the 8th. Again, the big train had their backs to the wall, and again they found an answer. Ben Mart scored on a Tyler Villaroman RBI groundout, and then it was Carson Taylor's turn to score A.J. Lee on his own RBI groundout. Though Carson was the youngest player on the 2018 team, he was also one of the best.
Carson's kind of one of the special players on the team that year because he was the youngest player. He was the only rising freshman. And so everyone kind of, like all of the players really kind of took him under their wing. And everyone really wanted him to do well. Yeah. And he did.
He was one of those guys that, I mean, not a lot of people were talking to him at first because he was like the younger guy. He was shy. He wasn't the first to approach you. But that season, everybody really liked Carson.
With 2 outs in the inning and the game tied at 8, the big train still had an opportunity to score. One half of the equation was Fox Simones, a lightning-quick runner on third.
probably one of the best athletes that I've ever coached. I won't tell him that because he's like a nephew to me. I've known him since he was 7 years old. But his athleticism is, I mean, it's big league. It's ridiculous. If Fox got on base, I'll see you at third in 2 pitches. Fox ran a 6.28, 6.3, 60. And that was timed a couple of times by the scouts. It's unprecedented. It's plus speed.
Fox was, if I recall, like one of the fastest players on the team. He stole a fair number of bases, and he wasn't always able to get hits when he kind of wanted to or might have needed to, but he still was able to power through in some moments. And as I recall, he did pretty well in the postseason.
The other half of the equation was the man in the batter's box, the dominant Alec Burleson, who had devastated the Ripken League all season long with his pitching as well as his hitting.
The key to Alex's success is his approach at the plate. Very confident, knows what he can handle if he took a 7 or 9 ball approach at the plate and you line the balls across. What do you hit? What do you not like to hit? You're going to get this, you're going to get that. All those intangibles with your approach. He had a clue. He had a wonderful approach and just a beautiful swing that he developed through high school and obviously coach at East Carolina, Palumbo and them, Godwin. But he knew what he was doing when he was going up there. He'd go up there, I'm gonna drive this ball to left center. Here's what I'm looking on. He could do it. So he was so more advanced than most of these guys when it came to it. Not so much as a pure hitter, but having an idea and an approach of what he was going to do at the plate.
When you spend a lot of time on the mound, you're able to anticipate pitches in a different way than you would if you haven't spent that time. And so for Burleson, he had the power, but he also was able to see the ball in a way that really helped him get the ball over the fence or get on base and drive runs in.
Burleson, I mean, not only was he such a great hitter, he was a great pitcher too, but as a hitter, the best thing I can tell you about Alec Burleson is that there was a game, it was against the Redbirds actually, where he had gone on a stretch where he maybe hit in a week, he had like 6 home runs or something like that. And the Redbirds actually pulled their third baseman and put him in the left field. And they had a 4-man outfield when Burleson came up to bat, which just shows you the respect and that the league had for him, that the Redbirds had for him to do that. Because he was such a good hitter, he could use all parts of the field. Most of his home runs would go to right field as a left-handed hitter. He had tons of pull power, but he could also go opposite field. And he just had good knowledge of the strike zone. And I think because he was a pitcher, that definitely helped him out a lot at the plate.
I mean, besides bat speed and the fact that he's got God-given talent, the dude hits bombs. I mean, the guy, you could throw him any pitch in any count. He'll be able to adjust to it and make contact at the very minimum. It might not be good contact, but he was really good at, I feel like, just seeing the pitch all the way in. I mean, we were yelling from the bullpen in the beginning when he first got here. He had a couple bombs, but he was hitting like 800 through like 5 games. So we were like, don't throw to him. We were like screaming from the bullpen. We are just like, it's your fate. And it was. I mean, that guy turns baseballs into mashed potatoes.
Burleson used that plate approach and talent to crack an RBI single that scored the Speedy Simones from third, and the Big Train ended the 8th inning with a 9-8 lead. The team needed 3 more outs, but having already used McCarville, they decided to go to setup guy Gavin Hinchcliffe in a closing role.
With the pitching philosophy and the pitching rules, we had to be careful on how many pitches you can run. But we knew we had a lot more depth than they did on the bump, and they had some unfortunate injuries, and it stinks. I've been there before. Gavin, was a Hokie, and he transferred to Kansas State, I believe, and I won't hold that against him. But he came in and he just threw hard. I mean, he was 92, 94, pounded his zone, and you just knew what you're going to get out of him, and he was excited, ready to roll.
Hinchcliffe was usually a 7th, 8th inning guy. He was the hardest throwing pitcher on the team, but because McCarville was because they hit him in that 8th inning, Sal brought in Hinchcliffe to close out the game, and he did a phenomenal job.
Phenomenal he was, and Hinchcliffe sat down the Redbirds 1-2-3 to close out the game. With that, the Big Train took a 1-0 lead in the LCS and then headed to Baltimore for Game 2, which ended in a loss. Unfortunately, Game 3 would never be played due to rain, and it gave the teams mixed emotions when both squads would be named 2018 co-champions of the Cal Ripken League.
You know, as a little kid, you don't want to share anything, but you got to learn how to share. And, you know, we didn't want to share with them, but it was only fair. Yeah, we won the regular season and, you know, we're ahead and this and that. But at the end of the day, we can't control, you know, the weather. And it rained and it rained and it rained. And we're sitting in the dugout and they're like, what do you mean you can't play? Well, we can play tomorrow. We just won't have anybody there. And they were in the same situation. And they go, well, we're going to make co-champs whether you like it or not. Oh, no, I don't like it because I think if we won the regular season, then we should be the champs, and they should have won the regular season. But at the end of the day, if you would have saw the players in the stands and the coaches and everybody, you would never know that there wasn't one champion.
It was definitely somber. I think everyone was really disappointed that they couldn't play. But I think guys were also fine with it. I mean, you obviously want a definitive, like, this team is the winners. But the way that the season had played out, it made sense. Like, it was kind of weird karma that the Big Train and Redbirds had tied just based on the way that the whole season had been, and they had been kind of neck and neck.
As a result, this clutch win helped the Big Train secure that co-champions title and keeps the 2018 team in the memory of the fans. Many of the pieces from the team have since moved on to the MLB minor league systems, which speaks to the extent of the talent on the roster. Burleson was selected in the second round and Taylor in the fourth round of the 2020 MLB draft, while Clarke, Lee, and Brown were all selected in the 2019 MLB draft. 2 years later, this game and team still resonates with the players and staff who were a part of it.
What I remember most from that game was just the back and forth of it. And, you know, you had the two giants of the Cal Ripken League, the Big Train and the Redbirds. And to see both of those teams playing at their best, I think was the best part of it. In the 2 years that I called Big Train, that was the best baseball game that I saw, because both teams they played great. And right when you thought that one team had took the lead and was going to take the momentum, the other team came right back and stole it. And just that back and forth and the greatness on the field that day, I think is what I'll remember most and take away from.
I look back and think about what that team really was, and it's more of just like a powerhouse. Like, it's crazy that we got all those guys on one team. And I know I sound like I'm talking a lot of gibberish, and I'm not a big leaguer, so I can't say that these guys were big leaguer talent. But I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, 3, 4, 5 guys on that team like make their way up to at least double AAA. And those are the guys that we were riding on pretty much the whole time. I mean, Burley, AJ Lee was nasty, but most of all, I think that team had such a good time because there wasn't really anybody that nobody disliked.
That's it for this week's episode of Top 10 Thursdays. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us and helping complete another fun edition of this program. Next week, we'll be looking at game number 6 on our countdown, a contest from 2017. Until then, keep your eye out for more programming on Big Train TV, and we'll be back next Thursday.